Welcome to the REBT Advocates. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. I have a clinical psychology practice and a popular book, 3-Minute Therapy, which is available at therebt.life. Tommy Bateman, my partner, will not be joining us today. And I will be addressing an email from a viewer about ineffective 3-minute exercises, the A, B, C, D, E, F, and how to improve them. So this is probably be of most interest for people who have been working on 3-minute exercises and have some background in rational emotive behavior therapy devised by Albert Ellis in the 1950s. So here's his email and questions, and here are some of my suggestions. So his first section he titles, Think, Don't Just Parrot. He says, I struggle with this a lot, and I keep upsetting myself over the same things despite going through the A, B, C, D, E's. I think he means 3-minute exercises, A, B, C, D, E, F, every day. And when I hear that someone's been practicing a particular exercise on a particular problem and they don't feel like they're getting anywhere, that's a red flag to me saying that there might very well be a secondary disturbance. They're upset about being upset, or they might be upset about not getting anywhere on their disturbance. So they have a must. I must not be disapproved of, which creates their first anxiety. And then the secondary is, I must feel better right now. I must be over my anxiety. And that freezes them in the must, and it makes it much more difficult to get over them if they continue to work on the primary problem, not on the secondary disturbance. And I'll get back to that. So the first principle is look for the secondary disturbance, disturbed about being disturbed, if you're not making much progress. Then he says, the problem is I already know the answers, so the 3-minute exercise becomes a written task that I've already done 1,000,000 times. So when he says he already knows the answer, it's important to keep in mind the 2 levels of knowing. We have often a superficial recognition of what's reasonable, which is there's no reason why I have to be approved of. I'm just an imperfect human. I don't turn into a rotten person because someone disapproves of me, rejects me, or dislikes me. But you may be able to say that. You may even be able to teach it to others. But the issue is, have you gotten to the second level of knowing? And that's from a superficial recognition at level 1 to a deep conviction at level 2, where you deeply feel, believe, act on the idea that you don't have to get this approval. And it's not the end of the world. And you can still enjoy life considerably, even if you're rejected or even reviled. So the question is, how do you get from level 1 to level 2, from a superficial conviction to a superficial recognition, rather, to a deep conviction? And the answer is by using the main learning principle, which says that reinforcement is the royal road to learning. The more we reinforce, practice, go over something again and again and again and again, as long as it's meaningful, and it sounds like this viewer is not finding his 3-minute exercises very meaningful, and I'll address that in a minute. As long as it's meaningful, then we build new networks in our brain level 2, knowing, or level 2, understanding, a deep understanding. There are no musts and shoulds, no rotten people, just imperfect humans. And we act on that. We feel it. We believe it deeply. It's a new way of looking at things. It's a new perspective on ourselves, others, and the world. Then he suggests 3-minute exercises that he's done, which is A, activating event, the adverse situation, and in his case, someone doesn't approve of me. B, his irrational belief, I must get approval or I'm no good. C, the consequence of his must, in this case, it's anxiety. And then he says, I know how this always goes. Why must I? Where's the evidence, etc. So a problem here is it sounds like he's just using this as a penmanship lesson or parroting the right things to say, but not really deeply thinking it through. And at D, we're setting up an experiment. We have a hypothesis, I must get approval or I'm no good. And at D, we're going to, in our mind, create a mind experiment and look for the evidence. Can we think of any evidence for the must? Not for your preference, that it would be preferable, but you absolutely have to, and you turn into a worm if you don't get it. So really think about it. And if you're not doing that, if you're just sloughing off the question, writing it down because that's part of the format, clearly it's not going to work. Then at E, he says, I also know how this will go. There's no reason why, although I prefer it if, etc. So again, it sounds like he's bored with this and not thinking it through. Now, there are many ways to counteract this problem, that the 3-minute exercises are getting stale because you're doing it over and over and over again. So here are a few. One is make some changes, use a different activating event. I'm sure there was not just one situation in your history where someone rejected you and you feel anxious about it, or someone may reject you and you feel anxious about it. So you can use different A's, different activating events for some variety. Also, look at B, the irrational belief. Often you may have a few different irrational beliefs about a particular situation, like a rejection. So you can vary the irrational beliefs, or you can vary the wording of the irrational belief. For example, rather than phrasing it in terms of a must, you can phrase it in terms of awful, terrible, or horrible. I must get approval, and if I don't, it's the end of the world, it's horrible. So that would be a variation, and change how you address it and how you think about it. Also, there's I can't stand it-itis. I must get approval, and if I don't, I can't stand it. So you can use that as the irrational belief. Or I'm no good. I'm a rotten person. I'm a loser because I'm criticized. So that's another variant. These are all absolutes. They're all derivatives of the must. So try that kind of variation. And then at C, he has anxiety. So B is I must get approval or I'm no good, and that leads to his anxiety, which is correct. But if he's doing the same ABC over and over again, of course, it's going to get stale. So you can use other situations, other problems, unless this is your only problem, then you just use that. But you can use other situations, such as situations where you feel depressed, and other emotions where you feel depressed, or situations where you got angry or resentful, or where you procrastinated or acted addictively. So there are a number of variations on that. And even if this is your only problem, you could work on something that may come up in the future. Suppose I'm asked to give a talk to a large audience and I get anxious. So that could be one you could conjure up. Or suppose I get a serious illness So that would be another one that you can work on, which would give you some variety. And another thing you can do is look for a general A. Usually at first I recommend using specific activating events. Rachel criticized me, or I was late for the deadline, or I overslept, specific situations. But to vary it, you can use a general situation such as, suppose I procrastinated A, and then C would be guilt or self-blame. Or suppose I act addictively, rather than specific addiction, suppose I act addictively. Or another general one could be, suppose I screw up, which also could be a general situation. So you could try a general A. At D, you can vary that at the disputing. You can say, for example, what's the evidence? I must have another person's approval. Or you could say, prove it. Where's the proof? Where's the data? How does it follow logically that because I prefer approval, therefore I must have it? Or you can use a pragmatic question, where does it get me to make myself anxious? So that would be another D or question you could ask a D. And then at ease, the effective new philosophy, again, you could vary your ease. You can try for a new way of saying the ease that are meaningful, that in a way that you haven't said it before. Or you can add passion to your ease, make it passionate. You could say, for example, I never, never, never have to get anyone's approval. Or if I'm criticized, tough shit, fuck it, it's not the end of the world. So try more passion. Another thing you can do to vary the ease is plagiarize. In my book, 3-Minute Therapy, in every chapter I have at least one 3-minute exercise with copious E statements in that exercise. So if some of those statements speak to you or are meaningful, then use them. Another way you can vary the E is by using the test of semantic accuracy, semantic precision, which Tommy and I discussed in an earlier YouTube. And briefly, what that means is don't allow yourself to use the word must or should in any sense, or call someone a bad person in any sense, even if you're not disturbed, even if it's not psychopathological. And that will help train you to think more without the musts and shoulds. And then he says, it feels like a chore, referring to doing the exercises, and it's no wonder it feels like a chore if he's writing the same thing unthinkingly over and over again. And then finally he says, it's hard, so I avoid actually doing the thinking. Exactly right. So it's not easy to make deep philosophical change. It takes work, it takes facing the difficulty, it takes commitment, passion. But if you want a deep philosophical change, it's important that you think deeply about it and try using some of these suggestions I've given. If you have any questions about these suggestions, or you try it and they don't work, please comment below and send both of us questions on the comments section, or you can email us, and we will try to address any viewers' questions. Well, thank you for viewing the REBT Advocates. We'll be back soon. And comment, give us a like, and contribute to Patreon if you enjoy our videos, and subscribe to the REBT Advocates to live a rational life.